All right, everybody, this is a demo to walk through a few different steps of your data analysis process. So at this point in the class, you should have data that looks like this. This is data that you derived from your survey, right? So for one of our progress checks, you pulled your data out of your Google Sheet, or rather out of your Google form and into a Google Sheet, which is what you have here. So we have a few different things that we want to do with this data once we have it. So the purpose of this video will be to show you how to get your data from Google Sheets or Excel, all right, process is similar for both, into SPSS, and then how to conduct your analysis in order to write your results. So I'll be running a few different things here. Some will apply to your data, some will not, but I want to give you a general kind of sweeping idea here of what we can do with our data. So if we think back to the exercises that we've done in class, we code our categorical variables, all right? So we do want to do something like that here. So most of you will have a question like, what is your gender? Or asking participants to report gender. All right, in this case, you will have perhaps 2, perhaps 3, 4, depending how many categories you gave. You might have a prefer not to say. In this case, for this particular data set, we only have male and female respondents and then a few blank responses, which is okay. All right, so something that you might want to do is start to create a coding system here. So in order to do so, you might want to create a key, okay? So I started creating a little bit of a key here to give you an idea of how you might want to set this up. So maybe for gender, we want 0s for male and 1 for female. Okay, hopefully this sounds familiar because we have done this before. But I'll show you how we can do this over here in Sheets before we move over to SPSS. So what I've done here, all right, is I've clicked this column, right? I've clicked on B. Now I'm going to go to Edit. I'm going to go to Find and Replace. And we can code, all right? So we can find all instances of female, replace with a 1. All right, and we can take all instances of male and replace with a 0. Right, and just like that, we have wonderful coded responses. This is going to make it easier to pull us over into SPSS, which we will do here in a minute. All right, so you have gender, which is categorical. All right, you have age here, which is continuous. This particular data set is about drug use. All right, so we have a couple questions that move on. I'm looking up here in the formula bar so you can see the different types of questions we have. So we have lots of demographic, general questions. We have some questions about academic success. All right, and then as we move forward, all right, look how many questions we have. This is wonderful. All right, feelings of depression, stress. All right, then some questions about marijuana, alcohol, all right, if you're prescribed to use, how often do you use on a scale. So we have lots of different data types here, and you might be in this boat where you have lots and lots of data but do not know where to begin. So I will show you where to begin. All right, so we'll run lots of different types of analyses here. But let me show you some more coding. All right, so if you make a key, maybe you want to switch your employment variable to rather than NA, why don't we go with unemployed? Unemployed. All right, so we have unemployed, part-time, and full-time, all right, as our 3 categories. All right, so if we go to form responses, all right, if we click here, go to edit, go to find and replace. All right, 0 can be unemployed. All right. Oops, rather, let me make sure I have these in here correctly. Unemployed. All right, we'll replace with a 0. Okay, replace. It tells you how many instances. We had 17 instances of unemployed. We have part-time. Remember to type in exactly what you see on the sheet. All right, part-time we'll replace with 1. And full-time we will replace with 2. Okay, so just like that, all right, now we have some wonderful codes here. We have a key to let us know what those codes mean. That will come in handy once we actually move over into SPSS. So I'm not going to go through and do this for every single variable because I just want to show you some different types of analysis, but you should focus in on the variables that you think you will use for your analysis, and those should be centered around your hypothesis. All right, so in this case, if the hypothesis is that drug use impacts stress and depression, we should focus largely on those variables, with a few others to kind of throw into the mix here. Remember, our demographic variables like gender and age, pretty much everybody will want to be using those in some form. So I could go on and say code this. How many hours do you work in a week? All right, but I'll go ahead and leave that be for now since I already have one employment variable. If you're interested in ethnicity, you could come up with a set of codes for this. Again, for now, I'll go ahead and leave it, right? And then kind of looking through these questions, you would go through and determine which ones you are most likely to use. All right, and then start pulling those over into your SPSS sheet. So let me show you how we do that. So let's say that you're ready to move over into SPSS. Well, we have this gender variable and we have this age variable. So let's go ahead and go into variable view, all right, like we've done before in our previous assignments. I'll put in gender, I'll put in age. All right, we do want to make sure that we're indicating what type of measure these variables are. So gender is categorical, age is a scale, and you know what, I'll go ahead and put employment in here as well. All right, employment. Okay, there we go. That's also categorical, right? We had 3 categories: unemployed, part-time, and full-time. All right, so for our categories, right, we'll want to take these key values and we'll want to assign value labels to them, all right? So again, hopefully this feels familiar. We have done this before in SPSS. All right, so we're basically telling SPSS what to expect. We're saying, okay, we're going to put 0s and 1s into this column, and this is what they stand for. All right, likewise for employment, unemployed is a 0, 1 is part-time, all right, 2 is full-time. All right, so let's go ahead and start here. I'll show you how we can pull the data into our data view. Okay, so here we go. We have 3 columns of data ready to go. All right, so you can go ahead and copy and paste this info in here. So we have gender and age. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. I'm going to hold Shift and select these values. I'll do a right click and copy, or a Command or Control C. All right, and then I'll go over here and we can paste those values right in. Okay, wonderful. All right, so we have a couple of variables in here ready to go. We can do the same with unemployment. I suppose I could have done these all at once, but that's okay. I can quickly just select, copy, and paste here into SPSS. So again, for moving your data into SPSS, start with what you really think you need, all right? Start with just a few variables first. You can always move more over later, but for now you want to make sure that you have what you need to run a hypothesis test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run a few different types of tests here. I'm going to run a correlation, I'm going to run a t-test, I'm going to run a ANOVA, as well as a chi-squared. And those are the 4 major test types that we will be running in class. So I'll start working on moving some more variables over. Remember that you can do things like run quick means, all right, rather average. Oh goodness, all right, average. All right, you can calculate an average. All right, it's guessing that I want an average of this column, and it is correct. But remember, you can select these manually. All right, you can select which cells you want. It'll give you an average. So now we know that our average age for the sample is 22 years old. That's great data to say put into your method section or into your results. All right, so lots to work with here. But let me go ahead and pull a few more variables over here into SPSS. All right, let me go ahead and move through here and let's see what we want. Okay, how many units are you enrolled in? That's another good one. So we'll go ahead and put in units. All right, that's a scale. All right, no need to code here. This is just a scale variable, number of units. All right, see, we can calculate something like an average here as well. Average number of units is 13. All right, that's pretty high. Okay, here we go, number of units. And you might start to notice a couple of things here. All right, I think I noticed one down here. Oh goodness, I guess I need to copy all of my units in. See, just make sure you're being careful, all right? Don't be negligent like I just did. Okay, make sure you're copying all of your units. But something that you might notice is blanks in the data here. So let me show you a case of that. Okay, so here, for example, somebody did not report their gender, which, remember, we told our participants that they could choose to not respond to a particular question. So something like this is fine. What you don't want to do is go in and put a 0 here, right? Or fill something in. If you leave it blank, SPSS will just ignore it, and that's exactly what we want, right? It's a null property. We do not want it included in analysis, so don't fill it in. All right, that's one point to make here. Another point is to kind of screen to make sure that there's nothing unreasonable, right? When you're looking at how many units, all of these values seem reasonable. If you saw something like 125, you might say, maybe somebody misunderstood the question or entered it incorrectly or whatever it may be, right? So you do want to take this time to screen your data as well. All right, so lots of variables here. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and pull some that I want to use for analysis. All right, so it looks like we have a stress variable here. All right, stress on a scale. I'll go ahead and call this stress, label it as a scale, and then I'll go ahead and copy this data, all right, over here. So now I have a scale stress variable. All right, let me keep moving to see which ones I want to include. Ooh, how many hours of sleep do you get a night? That's pretty good. Do you ever experience anxiety? Somewhat similar over here to this, are you ever worried or stressed, but we're answering on a different scale, 1, 2, and 3. All right, do you ever experience feelings of depression? All right, we might want to add this in as well. Depression, all right, this is also on a scale. All right, so I'll go ahead and copy these values over as well. All right, so hopefully you're kind of getting the idea of what we're doing here. If you have any categories, you label them. If you have scales, you can copy them right in as long as you define them. Okay, do you ever use substances to help cope with anxiety or depression? Okay, yes or no. All right, this seems quite relevant to our topic at hand. So I'll say something like substance for coping, okay? And we'll code. 0 will be no, 1 will be yes. So remember that a variable like this is going to help us to create groups, all right? Meaningful groups. All right, sorry, I'm really hopping around here. That we can use to divide up our analyses. So I'll go ahead and find no, replace it with 0. All right, I'll go ahead and find yes and replace it with 1. All right, we'll go ahead and copy these over. And then I'll just get a few more so that we can demonstrate a few different types of analysis. So substance for coping. All right, remember SPSS does not like spaces in our variable names, so you want to make sure there's no spaces. We'll go ahead and code these. All right, 0 for no, 1 for yes. Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and make this a little neater looking. All right, again, we have somebody who maybe didn't answer this question. That's fine. As long as it's a null value, SPSS will avoid it. All right, do you ever feel depressed as a result of stress? Why don't we go ahead and do this one as well? All right, we'll do depressed, stress. All right, we'll keep consistent, 0 for no, 1 for yes. All right, moving back here. All right, I will go ahead and find and replace 0 for no. Find, oops, backwards. All right, again, this is what happens when you move too quickly. Find yes, replace it with a 1. Okay. See, prefer not to say, we'll go ahead and just leave that blank. This is why you just want to screen your data, make sure you don't have anything funky. Clean it up. All right, so back to variable view, we have something like, what do we want to call it? Depressed from stress. Okay, again, we have no, we have yes, okay. Okay, all right, and then we can go ahead and put this data in over here. All right, and we'll move along. Do you think marijuana is more dangerous than alcohol? All right, what a great question. All right, have you ever used substance such as marijuana or alcohol? We have codes. Are you prescribed? How often do you use? All right, this will be a great one. We'll do something like, all right, marijuana, alcohol use. Okay, and this is a scale. All right, so we have nominal, we have scale. All right, so I have lots of variables in here. This is arguably more than you would need for your first pass at analysis. But I just want to show you many different types of analysis here. So let's go ahead and get to it. I think this will probably be the last one that I pull in here. Okay, marijuana, alcohol use. All right, so notice that we have a mixture of different types of data. All right, we have nominal variables, we have scale variables. In some cases, you might have ranked order variables. Ranked order variables we use in a sort of different way. They can kind of move into our t-test and ANOVA area, but they can also be used for things like correlations. So we have some more unique concerns there. So if you're working with ranked order variables, you know, we can talk about it. Can you get through the week without using substances? Okay, another good question, but I think we'll go ahead and leave it for now. Any problems as a result? Are you able to stop if you want to? All right, what a great question. All right. Okay, so we've reached the end of this data set. So again, notice that I went through and kind of cherry picked, all right, picked and coded the variables that I'm hoping to use. All right, so this is a great place to sort of begin here. All right, now we have a wonderful data set. Remember to save your data set. I'll go ahead and just save mine here. All right, practice what I preach here. All right, so now we're ready to run some analysis. So if you're going to run some analysis on your data, the first thing you should think of is, what is my hypothesis? All right, in this case, the hypothesis was to do with substance use being related to stress and depression. So we'll probably want to start somewhere with substance use, okay, and our stress and depression variables. So maybe the first thing that we want to do is just sort of a correlation matrix. All right, why don't I start with correlation? I'll go ahead and go through basically our exercise 4, 5, and 6. All right, so I'll go through and do each one. So maybe I want to run a correlation. We'll be running bivariate correlations. Remember, bivariate correlations work with our scale variables. So maybe we want to include age, maybe we want to include stress, depression. I'll throw units in there as well, just so we have sort of a large matrix. And I'll throw our substance use. Specifically here, we're focused on marijuana and alcohol. So I'll throw all of those in here. Remember, there are a few different decisions we can make here about what type of correlation to run, but I'll go ahead and leave these as is. Pearson, two-tailed. This will work for most of you. Okay, we can get some stats here as well. Options, means, and standard deviations. All right, you can always click in here to see what else is available to you, though we will not really be messing with these variables. All right, let's press OK. All right, we have some correlations here. All right, so let's consider a couple of things here. All right. So we have means and standard deviations. All right, here in this table, we have our average age. Remember, that should match what we calculated over here, right? And like magic, it's the same, right? Remember, Excel and SPSS are just big calculators. So we have the mean for age, the mean for stress, mean for depression, mean number of units, and then a mean marijuana alcohol usage here. Okay, so over here in the correlation table, all right, we have a few things going on. So let's take a look. All right, notice that we have these little asterisks down here. Correlations are significant at the 0.01 level. So let's see if we have any significant correlations here. All right, remember we were particularly interested in substance use and stress and depression. All right, so I'm down here where it says marijuana and alcohol usage, and then I'm scooting over to the stress and depression columns. All right, stress and depression, marijuana, alcohol use. Remember, you can look at it over here too. There are duplicates because this is a a matrix. So no significant correlations here. The relationship between marijuana and alcohol use and stress is 0.187. That's quite low. The significance value is not less than 0.05. Similarly, we have for marijuana and alcohol use and depression, negative 0.120 with a significance level of 0.398. All right, so these are not significant. But now we can look around to see if there are just any other significant relationships. And we do see one, okay? See these two asterisks here. It seems that there is a significant relationship between stress and depression. Okay, between stress and depression. We have an R value, a correlation value of 0.58, all right, and we have a significance level of less than 0.0001, right? 0.000 means it's very, very low. All right, well, that's interesting, right? It doesn't necessarily support our hypothesis, but we do still see this relationship. Maybe then we want to go to legacy dialogues and create a quick scatter plot, right? Maybe we want to see a quick scatter plot of these two variables. Let's see what the shape of that relationship actually looks like. All right, a little bit clustered here. This is not our most beautiful scatter plot. Normally we want to see a little bit more variation in our data points here. But what we have here, we can see a general upward trend between these two. These are somewhat restricted ranges here, only ranging to 10. But no less, we can see in general, it seems that as depression goes up, stress goes up as well. Remember, correlations are not causal, but this could be of interest to us, right? This could be something that you might want to discuss in your paper. All right, so that's correlation for you. If you were to report correlation in your results section, you would want the Pearson correlation value and the significance level. All right, let's consider a different type of analysis. Let's maybe try a t-test. Remember that t-tests require a grouped independent variable. All right, so we need two different groups to compare, and then we need a continuous or scale outcome variable. So that means that we would need one of these categories with two outcomes as our predictor. All right, and then we would need one of these scale variables as our outcome. So why don't we maybe take a look? I'm curious about maybe gender, right? Let's maybe see if there are any gender differences in marijuana and alcohol usage. All right, so if we go to Analyze, if we go to Compare Means and Independent Samples t-test, we could run a t-test on this. We can group by gender, all right, put in the codes that you used. Then we can compare marijuana and alcohol usage, okay? Again, you can always click into options and see what you want to do. Maybe you want a confidence interval. All right, but we can press OK, and we can get some info here. Let me go ahead and say this too. Don't be discouraged if you don't get significant results, okay? That's common, all right? That's part of research, right? Is that we're sort of looking for significance, but remember, just statistically, it's unlikely to find it, right? It's less than 5% likely. So most of us will not find significance. That's sort of the law of data and statistics. So don't be discouraged. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you can't write up a great results section. It just means that you did not maybe find what you thought you would. All right, so here we're comparing gender. We have male and female. Looks like we only had 8 males and 43 females in this group. All right, you might notice this in your data as well. College students are becoming more and more female. Okay, we have more women in college presently than men. All right, and we could also presume maybe why we have more women in this sample. This was an extra credit opportunity. We are giving this to predominantly psychology students. So there are lots of reasons that we might end up with something like this, but I digress. All right, here what we're comparing is marijuana and alcohol usage between those two groups, between the male and female groups. You have a t-value, all right? You would report the t-value in your results. You would report degrees of freedom, and you would report a significance value. We'll go ahead and use the top row, equal variance is assumed. No significance here, okay? Not even close, right? 0.834, we're looking for less than 0.05, so this certainly does not meet the mark. All right, again, we could graph this. We can go to Graphs, Legacy Dialogues, Bar. We can create a simple bar graph. all right, where we have gender on our category axis, and then marijuana and alcohol usage, the mean, right? I click this other statistic button. If we press OK, we get a bar graph that shows us that, hey, not much is going on here, right? But that's okay. Again, remember, we're not looking for significance. We're just looking to test what we maybe predicted. All right, so something else that we can do is in ANOVA. Remember, ANOVAs are very similar to t-test, except we have 3 or more groups. So I'll go to Analyze, Compare Means, and One-Way ANOVA. All right, so in this case, we need a grouping variable that has 3 or more groups. So I think I'll go ahead with employment here. All right, employment has 3 groups. Put employment in here. Let's see if our employment level impacts marijuana and alcohol usage. Okay, so if you go into options, you can do a couple things here. You can get descriptive stats, you can get a means plot. We have done this in exercise 5. All right, I'll press OK. All right, and here we have it. Okay, we have our descriptive statistics here. We have our breakdown. We have 16 unemployed participants, 20 part-time, 16 full-time participants. All right, so we have the mean marijuana alcohol usage across them. All right, we have the ANOVA. Again, if you were writing this up, you would include that F value and that significance value. All right, significance is not less than 0.05, so again, this is not significant. All right, womp womp. I think you're starting to get an idea of how this normally goes for the researcher. But here we go. Here's our means plot. Interestingly enough, there is an upward trend, right? Unemployed have the lowest usage. Full-time has the highest usage. You could make of that what you will, right? You could explain that in your results, but it is not significant, all right? So no profound discovery here, but you can still take a look at that data. If this was significant, you could go on and do a post hoc, a Tukey test, and determine exactly where those differences are. All right, so let's go ahead and just try one more test here. All right, let's go ahead and do a chi-squared test. This was the test we did most recently in exercise 6. The chi-squared test compares 2 nominal or categorical variables. All right, so we need two of these guys. All right, so to fit in line with the hypothesis, maybe we think that people who use substance to cope also have this issue of stress and depression. All right. So let's go ahead and try and analyze. All right, this time we go to descriptive statistics and crosstabs. We pull in our 2 variables of interest. We go to statistics, click on chi-square. All right, go to cells. I had you click on observed and expected, right, for the exercise. And then if you have this display clustered bar charts option, I would click it. If you don't, we can always make this chart as well. But if we press OK here, all right, again, we're kind of not hitting any luck here with significance. But you get your few tables. You get your case processing summary, right, who was included. You get your cross tabulation to see how many people said yes and no relative to their group membership. And then down here we have the Pearson chi-squared value, the degrees of freedom, and the significance value. Again, no significance here. If we go ahead and take a look, all right, what we have here is all frequencies, okay? So frequencies, we have those who said yes and no to the depressed stress question, those who said yes and no to the substance coping question, and we're comparing the relationships between the 2. So you can take a little time to look at this chart, all right, and make of it what you will. All right, so this covers the main types of tests that we would run for our analysis. You don't need to run all of these. You should run one test that has to do directly with your hypothesis. All right, and then anything else that you run should be out of interest or to help reinforce what you think or what you predicted to see what we can come to understand about those predictions. So of course in class we'll be going over this. I'm happy to run through this with your data as well, but this is meant to be an overview about how to get your data from Google Sheets into SPSS and how to do some of these basic analyses. All right, well, good luck playing with your data and of course be in touch with any questions.